I will say that Bernie Sanders gave a laugh.
You guys are crazy!
You're an animal. Get a job.
Something like that to myself and a lot of my colleagues is way out of line. It's way out of line. It's way out of line.
Regular order, Mr.
A congressional hearing about Washington, D.C. policy turned into something nobody in that room was prepared for when one congressman stopped everything with a single question, not a speech, not a motion, one question, delivered directly across the chamber that drained every ounce of momentum from the accusation that had just been launched at him and several of his colleagues. The question was 7 words long. The silence that followed it was louder than anything else said in that room that day. Stay until that moment, because what Byron Donalds does after asking it is the part that actually matters. Like and subscribe right now, because this is exactly the kind of moment that deserves more eyes on it than a committee room can hold.
Do I look like a member of the Third Reich to you, Ms. Tlaib?
Please.
Is that what I look like to you?
You're the one taking your voting card.
Is that what you think? Is that what you think? Is that what you think?
No, that's unethical.
I think it's radical and I think it's insane. And I'll respect everything that you say. But to say something like that to myself and a lot of my colleagues is way out of line. It's way out of line. It's way out of line.
Regular order, Mr.
Way out of line.
Regular order.
That's okay. But it's okay, right?
That is not how it
It's
goes.
okay, right?
You hold yourself accountable before you talk about
Hold
Washington,
myself
D.C.
accountable?
Washington, D.C.
Hold your own self accountable. How about
Keep it out of
that?
your mouth.
Hold your own self accountable. How about that?
Free D.C. and make sure you vote with your own voting card. Don't be giving it to somebody
Ms.
else.
Tlaib, all right, time. Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado. Wait a minute, Ms. Boebert. All right, thank you. Chair recognizes Ms. Tlaib from Michigan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's really important. I mean, we're talking about, 700,000 people that live here, and I feel like their voice gets completely just dismissed. And so, if I may, Mr. Chair, ask unanimous consent to enter the record the Washington Post poll of D.C. residents found 8 out of 8 in 10 opposed Trump's taking over of their local police and sending in federal troops.
Without objections ordered.
I think it's also really important to understand, like, the incredible kind of slanderous, defamation. I don't know what to call it. They're just burying Washington, D.C. You just heard them speak about our nation's capital in that way, in a way that I feel very much like that's not what I see. I see people walking around with their families, people enjoying time to see these beautiful, incredible, beautiful monuments and everything. And there's a pride here, too. And so I just want to bring the D.C. residents into this committee, because I feel like they are being made invisible. And this really ugly picture that is not reflective. And I'm from Detroit. I've seen it happen to my city. And it's despicable in a way that I feel like really goes up against our values. One of the things that I know in every abuse of power that, we let President Trump and the administration get away with in D.C., it will be replicated. It will be expanded across the country, and it is going to tear apart our communities. It basically interfered with legislation already passed by the local government. Was anyone on this panel consulted? Any of you? Raise your hand if you were consulted on any of these bills. Yeah.
We were not.
One of the things that, AG, I've been listening to you. One of the bills actually eliminates your position completely. What effect would that have? I mean, completely eliminating your position in regards to be able to do the job that you do to protecting all the families in Washington, D.C.
We'll start with the fact that more than 70% of the residents of the District of Columbia overwhelmingly voted for having an independent elected attorney general.
That's right.
And that's a recognition of the fact that when an attorney general is directly accountable to the people, directly responsive to the people, we are much better at doing our job in terms of addressing housing affordability and conditions in slumlords, seniors and consumers who are being scammed, addressing the issues that are most important to D.C. residents, because I am accountable to them.
I read wage theft is an issue, workplace discrimination. I mean, there's a number of issues that need to be addressed, and they're not going to address that. They want to paint you all as this ugly, dark, all just out in the street. I mean, the way it's just unbelievable because they all live here. I don't see it. I don't see what they see. I don't understand why we're allowing that to happen, because I actually think it's going to hurt our communities. People are going to look at Washington, D.C. folks in a way that I think is going to be very painful, but also, you know, I don't know, Mr. Jackson, I heard the stories. People didn't leave their homes. They weren't leaving their homes. Businesses didn't see people coming into, I mean, that's what we want in our nation's capital. Stay in your house, don't move, don't go anywhere, stay fearful. It's unbelievable that my colleagues continue again to eject this narrative and this rhetoric in regards to it. But I think it's important, Mr. Chair, just like in D.C., home rule was one out of Black freedom struggle in the fight for civil rights. We can't be passive right now. So nobody over there should take anything we say like so personally as if we're attacking them. No, we're attacking a process, not attacking people here. And I think it's really important. We need to stand up against this fascist takeover. That's not a bad word. It's a fact. And here in D.C. and across the country, it is so incredibly important, Mr. Chair, that this committee does not allow rhetoric that defames and or paints Washington, D.C. in a way that you all haven't really truly seen. You're just reading it. No, you're just reading it or something off of some.
Will the gentlelady yield to a question?
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Will the gentlelady yield?
No, I don't yield. I don't even have time. I can tell you.
Your time's expired.
It is expired, but Mr. Chair, but you all live here, and you're not telling people the beautiful parts that you do see in our nation's capital. And no, it's just wrong how we're doing it.
Chairman, I think it's insane that the gentlelady doesn't have an argument, but she's going to refer to me and some of my colleagues.
Mr. Donald,
we were from the Third Reich. This is insane.
You're going to look at 14, 15-year-olds as a bunch of criminals?
It's insane. Do I look like a member of the Third Reich to you, Ms. Tlaib?
Please.
Is that what I look like to you?
You're the one taking your voting card.
Is that what you think? Is that what you think? Is that what you think?
No, that's unethical.
I think it's radical and I think it's insane. And I'll respect everything that you say. But to say something like that to myself and a lot of my colleagues is way out of line. It's way out of line. It's way out of line.
Regular order, Mr.
Way out of line.
Regular order.
That's okay. But it's okay, right?
That is not how it
It's
goes.
okay, right?
You hold yourself accountable before you talk about
Hold
Washington,
myself
D.C.
accountable?
Washington, D.C.
Hold your own self accountable. How about that? Hold your own self accountable. How about that?
Free D.C. and make sure you vote with your own voting card. Don't be giving it to somebody
Ms.
else.
Tlaib, all right, time. Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado. Wait a minute, Ms. Boebert. All right.
There is a specific kind of rhetorical escalation that has become a fixture of congressional hearings over the past several years. It follows a recognizable sequence. A policy debate begins. The policy debate produces friction. The friction produces frustration. And the frustration produces the kind of language that no longer has anything to do with the policy that started the conversation. What happened in this committee hearing between Representative Rashida Tlaib and Representative Byron Donalds is a textbook example of that sequence, and it is worth examining carefully because what it reveals goes beyond this particular exchange. The hearing was originally about Washington, D.C. governance. Specifically, the debate concerned federal intervention in D.C. local affairs, the takeover of local policing by federal authority, and elimination of certain locally elected positions, including the office of the Attorney General. These are substantive policy questions. Reasonable people can disagree about the proper relationship between federal authority and local governance in the District of Columbia, which occupies a unique constitutional position unlike any state in the Union. Tlaib opened her remarks in that spirit. She referenced a Washington Post poll showing strong opposition among D.C. residents to federal intervention in their local police structure. She spoke about the importance of the elected Attorney General's office and its accountability to residents. She made the point that locally elected officials were not consulted before legislation affecting their governance was introduced. These are legitimate procedural concerns worth discussing. Then something shifted. The language moved away from policy and toward a different category entirely. References to fascism entered the conversation. Comparisons to historical authoritarian regimes were introduced into what had been a debate about municipal governance and federal jurisdiction. And at the moment those comparisons landed, Byron Donalds stopped the proceedings with a question. Do I look like a member of the Third Reich to you? 7 words. No raised voice. No dramatic pause constructed for effect. A direct question, aimed across the chamber, at the specific accusation that had just been leveled at him and his colleagues. The room responded immediately. Members began speaking simultaneously. The chair called for order repeatedly. The hearing fractured into the kind of overlapping argument that makes congressional proceedings difficult to follow and easy to dismiss. But within that chaos, something was happening that is worth isolating. Donalds made a choice that is harder than it looks in a moment like that. He did not match the temperature of the accusation. He did not reach for a counteraccusation of equivalent rhetorical force. He asked a question, and the question placed the burden of the comparison back onto the person who made it. If you're going to draw that parallel, you now have to defend it. You have to explain, in plain language, what specifically about this person in front of you supports that level of historical analogy. And that is a very difficult thing to do in real time when you're already 3 steps past the policy discussion that brought everyone into the room. Clay did not answer the question directly. The exchange continued at high volume, and eventually the chair had to step in to restore order. But by that point, the framing of the moment had already shifted. The original accusation, the comparison to authoritarian historical movements, was now the subject under examination rather than the argument being advanced. That is a significant reversal that happened in the space of 1 sentence. Donalds then said plainly that comparing colleagues to figures from that era of history was radical and out of line. He said it firmly, but without the kind of theatrical outrage that tends to transform a factual grievance into a spectacle. He was making a point about the quality of argument, not performing anger for the cameras. And that distinction matters because a performance of outrage and the expression of a legitimate objection are 2 very different things, even when they produce similar volume. The voting card comment that followed, the reference to accountability and voting with your own card, was a separate grievance that had been circulating in the committee context. It pointed to a procedural complaint about members voting on behalf of absent colleagues, a practice that raises its own questions about accountability and the mechanics of representation. Whether or not that specific complaint is valid in this case, the decision to raise in the middle of a heated exchange reflects the kind of rapid pivoting that happens when a conversation has already left the policy behind. What the D.C. Attorney General said during his portion of the testimony is worth noting separately. He pointed out that more than 70% of D.C. residents voted to establish an independent elected Attorney General, precisely because direct accountability to the people they serve produces better outcomes. That is a straightforward democratic argument. When officials are accountable to the population they serve rather than to an appointing authority, the alignment of incentives is different. Whether one agrees with D.C. home rule in principle or not, that argument about accountability structures deserves engagement on its merits. Instead, the hearing produced a moment that traveled across the internet primarily because of the confrontation rather than the policy content underneath it. And that is the pattern worth recognizing regardless of which side of the political argument you occupy. When historical comparisons to the most extreme examples of political violence and authoritarian governance are deployed in a debate about municipal policing and local attorney general appointments, the argument has left the building. What remains is performance. And performance, regardless of how satisfying it is in the moment, does not produce governance. Donalds understood that. His question was not an attempt to win an argument. It was an attempt to name what was happening, to say out loud that the level of language being used does not match the level of the policy being debated, and to put that naming on the record without requiring a spectacle to do it. That is a skill. It is not common, and it is worth pointing out when it appears, regardless of party affiliation, because the alternative, hearings that produce nothing but viral confrontations while the policy questions that affect millions of people go unresolved, serves no one except the people who benefit from the noise. The question was 7 words. What it contained was considerably more than that.